Everybody. We're so glad that you're here. It's amazing how many of you have come, and we're doing this amazing replication. And some of you won't understand what that means, and that's just fine. I certainly want to thank lots of people, all of you who are here, and Julie, none of this would happen without Julie, including the replication or the cause. And that's part of the fun. And we certainly thank Julie. And of course, I have to thank all the people who are in our group that we call the Landscapes of Poetry, our landscapers. I'm one lucky guy who gets to be with them once every month, and it's just a remarkable experience. We're going to ask you all to mute so that we don't have anybody sneeze in the middle of a poem or something like that. And but put your thumbs up and clap or snap your fingers or wave, do your jazz hands, and as the different poets read their poems after they read their poems. And I think that's all the rules there are. Go to the chat room. Use the chat room and celebrate or ask questions or make comments to any of your friends that you'd like to do. I'm going to start us off. I've been requested to do that. I tried to get out of that, but I'm going to start us off. This is a poem called A Christmas List for Santa. A Wednesday afternoon with no thought, Thursday. 3 weeks in the woods with my father. Cups of tea, plates of sugar cookies, the first ones I ever made, the dough still sticking to my fingertips. Comic books from the late 40s, Little Lulu, the Green Hornet, Felix the Cat. Every creek from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. The last page from 20 unpublished novels. The ease of a dog's sleep. 5 gold rings. A moon-draped evening among the birds and the hemlocks. Any snow-covered pile of leaves. Photographs, I don't care how many, of my daughter just before she smiles to the camera. 7 moments with the lucidity of cutting yourself with a bread knife. Whatever happens between what happens. The liturgy of an old monk laughing. And I couldn't think of a better poet to start us off than Beth McBride. I decided that we'd start with our finest poet, just to set the stage, because she is definitely our finest poet among the landscapers. And she comes to us all the way from Petoskey. How's that? And she's been with us for several years, and now she comes from Petoskey. What a thrill to have Beth with us to start us off, our best poet. And I want you to some of you might be new to poetry, so a little thing to watch for with Beth is she's especially exceptional at the use of a comma. So here's Beth McBride.
Thank you, Jack. There was a comma after the thank you. And knowing that I was beginning things, I thought, what do I want to give you that you can keep and hold on to? And so I give you an invitation to inhabit the life that you have, not just spend it, but to climb into it, embrace it, and find out what it can be. Let me invite you into a journey of seeking the wonder and mystery around you, responding with gratitude, wakened to moments' depths, joy in true knowledge that goodness abounds. Let me invite you into tomorrows that open with meeting yourself in the paths you take, daring to be unsure, see and hear something new, waiting before choosing whether to choose. Let me invite you into your stillness to hear your own heart's call and honor that faint voice becoming familiar, affirming the rivers that run deep within you, the longing and impulse to grow. Let me invite you into your whole self, the place where your joys, griefs, loves, fears meet each other. Receive your acceptance, become understanding, transform to compassion that grows as you offer and give it away. Welcome. And my next poem is entitled, in my ever so creative way, December Gathering. It is the last month of the side-swept year. I hear the crack and pop of rafters, the roar of gusts in the chimney flue, the shred of winds through the evergreens. Against the gray gold evening clouds, the geese are ciphered silhouettes, a cooperative message of survival scrawling across the slate of sky. Though calls are clipped short by the tempest, they descend the bluffs in concert, veering down toward rolling breakers, following the curve of shore to the shelter of calm, to the comfort of company. Cormorants, gulls, terns, geese, together, not once divided or doubting each other, not once suspecting ulterior motives, not once begrudging their freedoms diminished by staying together, assisting each other, creating the shelter of being one flock. Thank you. Merry Christmas.
Thank you, Beth.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. How about those comments? Well, I certainly want to correct myself because we have with us really the finest poet I've ever worked with, and that's Mary McSchmidt. And she's being enabled by her wonderful mother, who is also a wonderful poet, has several books out there. And Mary's trying to live up to that. So our the finest poet, of course, is Mary McSchmidt. And with Beth, it was calmest, but with Mary, I want you to be especially alert for her use of vowels. It's really remarkable the way she can discern A from U. And so here's Mary.
Thank you, Jack. So I am here with my mother, Jane McKinney, who is a former journalist, freelance writer, author, poet, and at age 95 is still writing poems. So we have breakfast here every morning before exercises and after a ritual that we call chair chat, where I sit on the floor at the foot of her recliner and we talk about what's outside her bedroom window, what the day's adventures are, and most importantly, we share our writing. My mother has been my writing mentor and my inspiration since I was born, and since many of my poems, including the two I'm reading this evening, have been influenced by her. It is a real joy to be with her and to be with you this evening. The first poem that I am going to read is titled A Daughter's Thoughts on Compression Stockings. If these socks are the future of 40% of the population, a byproduct of aging veins that refuse to push blood back to the heart, but instead leave it pooling beneath paper-thin skin, waiting to erupt as an ulcerated wound and become a feeding ground for deadly infections. Why were they manufactured to be as stubborn as the flying squirrel scratching a home in her attic? And if she is to unroll these stockings of steel from toe to ankle to knee without causing pain and without leaving unsightly, potentially dangerous rolls of fabric on the legs of her mother, why weren't her fingers created to be as nimble and strong as the raccoon ripping apart her freshly planted garden? And if there truly is a caring God, why is this dying? She finally has muscled up the calf of the sympathetic woman watching her struggle inside out. The second poem was also influenced by my fun-loving, on the pathway to sainthood husband, Reuben. It is titled Determined. We'd driven long hours to hike Sleeping Bear. You driving, me the one longing to hike alongside. We have arrived to find a parking lot long and empty, a barricade blocking the entrance, a forbidding closed for the season sign, replacing the hours of operation. Despite the welcoming gold of the beaches, red-tipped yellow of the maples, maroon hue of the oaks, Christmas green of the pines, a blanket of white chilled the peak colors of autumn. I suggested the park's deterrents were for cars, not hikers, and you, good-natured as always, remained silent, even as the northwest winds shook the trees and wet blobs of snow tumbled from branches overhead. As we began walking up Pierce Stocking Scenic Drive, the asphalt covered with snow and falling leaves, I mentioned how much easier a hike on pavement than sand. And you, my husband for 40 years, mumbled something about all trees looking the same after an hour, providing proof to the old adage about opposites. When we chanced upon the posted trail map outlining a winding 7.3 mile long road, a distance I truly did not remember, and you stood quietly in the sopping cold, we agreed you'd bail halfway. But I wish you'd been with me when I reached the Lake Michigan overlook. Not because a raven, claws spread, shrill calls emanating from a vicious beak kept swooping down inches from my head, but because Mother Bear, a legend for decades, revered for keeping vigil for her two lost cubs, was so much smaller than last I saw her, barely visible as she perched on a cliff of moraine. As I whispered goodbye, I wondered if her cubs, flourishing as islands in a freshwater sea, had finally let her go. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary. Wonderful vowels. Thank you so much. And now for our actual finest poet in the group. Actually, this is our bi-coastal poet, Peg Padnos. A part of the time she's in New York City, part of the time she's out in Napa Valley. She studies online with everybody that you've ever heard of. And it's quite remarkable that she brings her vocabulary to us and allows us to go, what? Whenever, about every third line. So I want to pay special attention with Peg when you're listening to her to try to help, as with the others, and notice her remarkable use of the gerund. So here's Peg.
Thank you, everybody, for being here. And thank you, Jack. Yeah, I like gerunds. They're good. I'm going to read two pretty short ones. The first one was inspired by an essay titled Ghost Rails of the Holy Land. It was published in the New York Times almost a year ago, January 19th of 2020. And it's by a journalist, Maddie Friedman. Ghost rails. Worn rails push through weeds, tracking toward infinity, like the stripes of a prayer shawl. Ghost whistles shriek an endless eulogy for a disappointed God. Desert winds whisper their memories. Once trains from distant lands sang songs of towns and cities, Haifa to Tulkarm, Jaffa to Jerusalem, Tel Aviv to Gaza, then on to Kantara and the Suez Canal. More than these linked to each other, crossing fluid frontiers. Think of the time before empires died and borders closed, when trains chuffing down the track carried spices and tastes of the wider world. The time before everyone was in a hurry, before crowds preferred walls to railroads. Folklore tells this tale about the shrugging attitude toward schedules and speed. Passengers in the first car hopped off their moving train, brewed a samovar of tea along the trestle, savoring as they drank. Then as the last car passed, they hopped back on. Imagine peering through brusque portholes of barbed wire around abandoned depots, or necklaces of shattered window panes. Ask the shades of station masters past, when's the train? Hear an answer rushing through the wind. The Rosh Hanikra tunnel is blocked. Weeds are high, fuel expensive. The locomotive needs a nap. Our engineer's asleep, and the clock is looking for its hands. Wait a little longer. Peace is running late. So, and I hope that peace will come someday, not just to the Middle East, but everywhere. The second poem was written after a prompt that challenged us to write about an object that we don't mention in our poem. And so this one is called Last Glass. And it has to do with a common symptom of COVID-19, which probably everybody knows by now. It's called anosmia, which is one of those words that Jack loves, and it means loss of smell. So here we go. Last glass. In an instant, nothing smells. Olfactory receptors flattened out, blank inhalations. In comparison, the loss is small. Still, we miss the boring redolence of morning coffee beans, sweetness of an infant's head, pungent sagebrush, the dog's fishy breath, depths of cardamom, mellow menthol, sun-warmed citrus, the rising chlorophylls of rain, cinnamon whiffs of crumpled curry leaves, old toes, garlic hitting olive oil in a hot cast iron pan, damp soil in its terracotta pot, old nose of an earthy sun-glazed zin, Domaine Magdalene Cabernet, terroir, plum sauce and fig in purgatorial sleep. Tincture of time, we ask, we hope, that bouquet and tannins meet. that the reservoirs of scent will be refilled. So, thank you.
Thank you. Again, I remind that you can certainly use the chat button on your computer if you'd like to say anything or make any comments or correct the use of the gerund in Peg's poem. And it's tough to follow those words, Peg. And so that's why I put the wordsmith Kathleen Markham next. And Kathleen comes to us from Saugatuck. And once in a while, she gets her computer to work. She's been on since 2:30 this afternoon trying to get it to work right. And it's hard to find that mute button down there on the left. It took her a couple hours, and then we found that thing. Kathleen is definitely, nobody can out-poem Kathleen. She's our best. And as with the others, just to help along, pay special attention to Kathleen's use of the question mark. It's quite insightful and used in fresh and original ways. So Kathleen, here you are.
Well, welcome everybody. I have a bit of a sinus infection, so I may not sound wonderful, but here I go. And the first poem is called That Old Chair. The chair itself belonged to a neighbor, and I loved sitting in it when I was a child. It was my daydreaming chair. It was deep and old, that buffalo brown yellow leather chair I woke up in one afternoon before I could walk. Across the room, I caught my papa's eye. His smile made me squeal, hands and feet flailing like a wind-up toy. What you doing hiding in that old chair? It be as brown as you, could swallow you up when you close them eyes, he said, as he crossed the room, picked me up, raising me over his head, smiling up at me smiling down on him. I can, all these years later, feel his soft, dark beard against my neck as he kissed me there. That old chair was Papa's chair, and Papa's chair was my chair. In it, we went traveling together to wild places where people danced to drums and gathered to hunt. He took me to mountain crests and ocean caves. He taught me songs of hope and songs of pain. That old chair was Papa's comfort on Sunday afternoons. It was his teaching chair, his traveling chair, and in it, one afternoon, he closed his eyes and went on a walkabout to a land beyond our knowing. The second one is Seasons of Thanks. I thank you, Lord, for winter days with skies of hazel's blue, for snow shadow secrets on nights breath caught in moonlight's bright splendor, for spring's silent color creep that stirs the restless soul to seek, for early morning sun-struck mists that succor in the passing. I thank you, Lord, for summer's splash of flower pockets tucked into surprise corners of simple places, for unvarnished afternoons of quiet conversation, for autumn's sunsets that backlight and bounce, prismatic, rollicking, dancing into winter.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's wonderful. And get well.
Thank you.
There's a lot of pressure on our next poet because his wife is with us and his daughter is with us, and boy, he's got to live up to this. But since he's our best poet, I don't think he'll have any trouble. I don't think he can match his daughter or his wife, but he'll give it his best shot, and that's Jeff Monroe, who comes to us all the way from across town. And just to help us along with Jeff's work, pay especially attention to, you'll be able to tell, to his use of the hyphen. Here's Jeff.
Thanks, Jack. So the first poem I'm going to read is called Bobo. Got it into my mind to have dinner with a chimp. What with human company being so unreliable these days, turned out to be easier to accomplish than you might think. There's a guy up near Newaygo who raises them. And for $228, Bobo came to our home on a Tuesday night in October wearing a diaper and a yellow safety vest. We sat first and had a glass of wine, a nice 2015 Pinot Gris. And after a sip, Bobo made a sound with his lips like a motorboat and poured his glass on the floor. On the plus side, he ate all the cashews we'd put out to go with the wine. We adjourned to the table, and here I made a mistake. Turns out chimps don't like gazpacho. Bobo tossed the bowl at the wall and howled as he watched its glutinous mass drip. We recovered with a salad, mixed greens with apples and cherries and carrots and tomatoes. He liked it, but the balsamic dressing was rather a poor choice. While vinegar has cleaning power, it's not that kind of vinegar, and combined with olive oil, it has definitely left a residue on the drapery. The main course was a mixed bag. He ate a hunk of pork tenderloin, but shoved the rest of it in his diaper. All of this caused me to change my mind on the fly about dessert. God knows what he might have done with a chocolate mousse. So I went stereotypical and gave him a banana, which he meticulously peeled from the bottom up and happily ate. And then he strolled into the kitchen and ate 5 more. Before you knew it, the doorbell rang. And it was the guy from Newaygo, which was provident because Bobo kept eyeing Mr. Chirpy, my wife's parakeet. The house became quiet and I took inventory. Yes, the drapes are a total loss and we're going to need to repaint where the gazpacho landed. But you know what? Not once did the name Trump come up. No one asserted the election was rigged. Nobody mentioned critical race theory or securing our borders. Nobody argued about vaccines. What's some fabric and paint in exchange for an exhilarating and occasionally terrifying night free from the endless American circus? And the next poem I'm going to read is called August Morning. Dog sitting means no chance to sleep in, but answering instead to the insistent yips and yaps of this little man whose bladder is the size of a grape. And so I stumble to the toilet. My bladder's not that big either. And then into clothes and out the door on an August morning, and am suddenly hit by how cold it is. Tito brushes along through the dewy grass, waters the neighbors' nasturtiums, the impatiens, some black-eyed Susans, and then sniffs his way into a hydrangea that is sagging under the weight of its voluptuous blossoms. My grandfather used to have a hydrangea like this. He took such care of it. This one looks like it could have started from a cutting from his. Some of its flowers are already on the ground and are already decaying. How much longer do these flowers have? Maybe a month. It's August, but the fall is sending warning flares. The sun is coming up, doing that blinding trick it does when the equinox is near. It won't be long until I can see my breath. Frost will come, these flowers will go brown, and then the bare winter. Tito snorts and scrapes the grass with his back legs. How much longer does he have? Maybe another 5 years. Me? Maybe 2 decades, or 3 if the family curses of cancer and Alzheimer's skip me. This morning, the approach of my expiration date is okay. It's all seasons and cycles and rhythms, and who are Tito and I compared to this showy hydrangea who will burst out again next summer, so alive, singing her songs of beauty, grace, and praise.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you,
Thank you.
Jeff. See how lucky I am? I just sit and they come on and I get to hang out with these people. It's just amazing. Well, we've reached the halfway point, and that means that leads up to our finest poet, who joined us this year. This is, by the way, our 12th year of meeting, and a few people come and go, not many, and most of everybody stays around. And there was an opening a little bit ago, and in came, well, who turned out to be our finest poet. And that's Ruth Zwald, all the way from her farm down there around Fenville. And a number of the fleece that Julie has that she turns into yarn come from Ruth's farm, and we're very grateful for that. And I just want to point out again, I'm trying to help with each of these poets because I think some people in the audience may be new to poetry. So with Ruth, one of the key things to open up the poem for you and pay close attention to is her use of the past participle. So here's Ruth.
Who doesn't love a
Said what?
goodness. Well, it's so good to be with you all. So happy to be here. So I have a couple of seasonal poems because I always find a lot of my inspiration in whatever is happening outside. So the first one is called Kinds of Snow. And suddenly you are back in your grandmother's tiny kitchen as she warms fresh milk, stirring in sugar and cocoa powder until it is smooth and rich. This kind of snow that travels through time. And then remembering snow when your sled won't fly, your fingers are frozen. It hurts so much as you begin to thaw out. And I know you know such snow when things are stuck, cold, painful. And there is magic snow, just before Christmas kind of snow, when the moon reflects the crystals, you want to watch all night to glimpse what might be in the dark, the unknown, the possible. And there's the, I'm so glad I don't have to drive anywhere snow, where you can spend a day in front of the fire reading a novel about other people's lives, so much more complicated than your own. And there are whole winters of the sorrowful kind, layered and buried in the still. Whole winters of digging out through memories, shovel by shovelful. The kind of snow that gifts you with time. Thank you. The next one is to honor the winter solstice, which will be on December 21 this year, and just love the changings of the seasons. So this one is called Hang Lanterns from the Trees. In these shortest of days,
I track my own footsteps in the snow, identifying the patterns of my boots, the sway of my gait, the direction I am heading, the purpose behind it all. In these longest of nights, when the fire burns against the dark, murmuring messages beyond warmth, constantly changing, consuming, piecing together the past, stitching my ancestors' stories pulled taut to my own threads, in patterns created to hold the dark in these shortest of days. In these shortest of days, I let the bread rise slowly. I let the snow fall ungrudgingly. Use the last of the carrots from the garden in a celebratory stew, consumed in the quiet of all things in these longest of nights.
Thank you.
Wish you all a happy solstice.
Thank you, Ruth. And I think some of you know Ruth is a shaman and studied with the shamans in South America and will be celebrating solstice. So that's marvelous. Thank you so much, Ruth. And we move on to our next poet, who's, well, it's not really fair to say this about because of following Ruth. By the way, I want to say hello to my sister. I haven't seen her in a long time. There she is. Hi, Betsy. And there's John. And we hope John's feeling well. And Betsy, don't you dare unmute because I know it'll come flying through the screen. Some people have said they don't know how my sister and I came out of the same womb. Our our introversion extroversions are quite in contrast, and that actually works really well together because we're crazy about each other. So that's fine. So we're on to Sharon Aaronsthorst, who's been with us for a number of years, and because she's become our finest poet. She wasn't at first, but she is now, and there's no question about that. She's also, I bring up my sister because she and Sharon live close to each other while the rest of us are freezing our off up here. They're down there in Sarasota. What's the name of that place? Longboat Key. That's right. And they get to sit on the beach together, and then they call me and tell me how nice and warm it is, and I can come in with a dog full of snow all over it, and they don't. So anyway, our finest poet is Sharon Aaronsthorst, and again, in my usual way, I like to help people along. Pay attention with Sharon because she's the master of the semicolon. Here's Sharon.
Thank you, Jack. I think with that introduction, I'm going to read my second poem first because it's a Florida poem.
Oh, okay. Sounds good.
When I pick up the shell, I notice a chip in the lip transforms it into a heart. Palming the heart shell and rubbing the ribs on the surface with my thumb, I remember the heart-shaped stones collected along the Camino while walking past ancient churches and pillars supporting cross or saint, along paths scented by eucalyptus and yellow broom in bloom, the way marked by pilgrim cairns and the symbol of a scallop shell. Exploring the hollow underside of the heart shell in my hand, I remember the heart-shaped face of my deceased niece, the emptiness in my brother's broken-hearted grief, and in the shell's depression, I feel the separation from my son. I will my mind from the shell cavern's emptiness and turn toward remembrances of spacious open-heartedness, a pastor holding my pain in prayer, a friend's soft touch, a gracious presence leading me in meditating loving kindness in community, until I know again that the hearts I find in shell or stone or memory require me to open mine to hold them. And the second poem is what I was going to read first. And this is one that goes back to a collective event we all shared in one way or another, and that was January 6th of last year. The morning after the mob stormed the Capitol, I climb into a stained glass window. I clamber up the brick wall, fingers sink into the cracks of caulk until my hands reach leaded frames of glass. Stretching myself across the puzzle pieces of bright green grass, the folds of the blood-red cloak, and over the glowing robe, I reach the lap of Jesus. He sits still below an olive tree, his right hand forever raised in blessing over the fragile children frozen in glass and time and place. I pull myself onto his lap, curl up as glass melts into flesh, lead pulses with blood, and the cold, flat surface warms and swells. Static arms begin to move, then circle to enfold me. He bends his head, his face toward mine. I lay my cheek against his chest. The music of his breathing mingles softly with my own. I rest in the beating of his heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Sharon. Thank you. Oh my goodness. You know, something that I would think that many of you may have noticed is how easy these people make it seem. And one of the things we talk about, or I guess I tell them early on, 12 years ago, it's very easy to make a poem look hard. That's the easy thing. The hard, anybody can make somebody feel stupid and unable to understand. There's nothing to that. But to be able to write with such depth and such clarity at the same time, that takes a lot. And I'm sure you've been able to understand how remarkable these people are at accomplishing that very thing. It ain't easy being easy. Well, next, I'd like to say that this is probably our weakest and worst poet because she'd start to laugh if I said that, and she's now glaring at me. But actually, nobody can hold up with Annie Volkema. In fact, a lot of the people in our group asked that Annie go last because nobody wanted to follow her because she is the finest poet in the group. And with Annie, I'd encourage you to pay special attention to her use of the pluperfect. Here's Annie.
Great. Thank you, everyone. Someone give me a thumbs up. You can hear me okay? Great. Glad to be here. The first poem I'm going to read tonight was written on the back of a dinner receipt when I was on vacation up north. It's entitled, What Can Happen in a Second? 1. The perch closes its mouth on the worm. My hand jerks the pole. Lungs swell quickly on a gasp. Water wrinkles as fins protest, heave. Fish surrenders, guilt surfaces. 2. Air pushed through open lips, a sigh, a puff of disappointment, or a clipped whistle at the dog who ran too far down shore. 3. There is a green aura where the sun touches the water on the horizon. We cannot help but call out this science to strangers, all facing the fading heat while waves break and wind pushes. We anticipate the mystery, absorb it like humidity on our goose-pimpled flesh. When it is over in a second, we smile shyly at those same strangers, trudging through sand back to cars, campers, differently warm. And the second poem I'm going to read is a love poem, and it's called Poet Pillow Talk. If all of your tattoos come to life at night when we sleep, there is a little garden floating just above us. It glows, and a mermaid rests in the foliage. She sings to us, and the scripture on your bicep curls up and around the mermaid with loveliness. Suddenly, the arrow shoots through the heart with no malice, and the anchor gently tugs on the warship below. The compass graciously turning a blind eye, the frigate bird between your shoulder blades alights and plays tag with the butterfly in and out of the sails, and infinity unfurls around our ankles over and over and over and.
Annie, I have to ask you, how many courses did you have at that meal that you wrote on?
Just a burger, just a good burger.
No wonder you had all those tattoos. Jeez. Wow. Well, here comes our techno expert. GF Corrick is up next. And how he followed, the reason he's going to follow Annie is because he's become, just in 1 year with us, outdone everybody. He's just by far, well, he's just blown everybody out of the water. He's so just the finest of us all. And he's especially good at the quadruple entendre. So watch for that in these poems. Here's GF.
Thank you. I have a bit of, I was just handed a news bulletin, though. I have to report this. The war on Christmas isn't going very well. Nearly 500 elves are missing. Blitz is in serious condition after a Salvation Army kettle bomb explosion at the North Pole Mall. And the hostage negotiations for Frosty are at an impasse. So I'll try to cheer everybody up. I shaved the other day. I was trying to grow a bushy mustache so I'd look like Sam Elliott, and I looked more like Richard Farnsworth instead, so I trimmed it. Then I went to the doctor and had this experience. This time it's early. The office is just opening. I'm here to see my doctor to find out if I'm still working or whether parts of me are not. This time I get a temperature check, a pulse rate check, a BP reading high enough to warrant a disappointed shrug. This time there are questions about falling down and whether I've hurt myself and whether I feel safe and whether I am sleeping and whether I am sad and whether I am worried about worrying or falling down. This time I am asked to view a circle with a dot in the center. I am told the circle is a clock face. I am asked to write the numbers in sequence on the clock face. I am asked to remember 3 words, then make the clock read 11:15. Then write down the 3 words, orange, purse, cat. This time, I wonder whether any parts of me are working, whether I have gotten the time right, whether I should have written Roman numerals on the clock face, whether it was a trick and the clock is digital, orange, purse, cat. This time, I wonder, did I get the words right? Did I remember them in order? Did I find out which parts of me are not working? Orange, purse, cat. I write them down again one last time, and this time I am taken all the way back to a room of yellow wooden floors, a giant green aquarium, a table and a box with 8 fat crayons, where I am 4, sitting across from William Benson. I look at my squiggled purple lines. I look at William's first drawing ever, a house with perfect windows, with smoke coming from the chimney, with a clock inside. The second poem is somewhat self-explanatory in the first couple lines, called The Depths of Meaning. Marine biologists say there is a 512-year-old shark cruising the Atlantic. An improbable guess, unless someone got close enough to create dental records or confirm that he coughed up the remains of a long extinct species. If he could talk, would he speak of his resentment for the constant flow of detritus that disrupts his reverie? The expectation he alone is responsible for cleanup? Would he express his discontent with the shards of wood that dart around his head? Does he despise Kurt Wheel? Would he finally tell where Atlantis rests? What is his life like? Does he have any fun? Is he ever a dinner guest? Is the view above less than white, or too often filled with smoke and deafening sound? Is he amused that nature's odd species drop below him to find their own place in the darkness? He used to laugh at them as they drifted blindly into the depths, but now he understands, and there are days he joins them in their silence. He misses the whale that ate ships and wonders why people don't mock dolphins. They're all smartasses. And seals have nasty dispositions and don't clean up after themselves. He has stayed lean through the years and knows where to find warmer water when he needs it. Does he know rainbows? Do the storms bother or inspire him? Does he feel poetry as he eases through the shallows and into the depths? Is he ever lonely or bored? Does he wonder why life moves in often imperceptible rhythms? He sees us as we are, most often out of our depth, perhaps stranded on strange shores, or simply adrift. Does he watch us as we watch whales off the coast of Massachusetts? Does he wish he were something else, that he could fly, that children drew his picture, that he could remember why?
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you. Well, usually if somebody's giving a reading, very often they hold up two fingers and say, this is the 2-poem warning for the audience. But we'll say this is the 2-poet warning. And next to last is a poet that's actually even more amazingly, well, everybody in the group just says that there's no question that Mariana Mavericks the finest poet in the group, and she's with us today. Also, she does the poetry of being a masseuse, and so if any of you need masseused, why Mariana is your person. MMM, Mariana Maver Masseuse. There you go. That's pretty good. And just to help you along with this, she's especially strong at the use of the subjunctive. So Mariana, here you go.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to start.
And you're reading in front of your teacher, so not,
yes.
You know,
yeah,
50
and I
years ago.
What was that? I'm sorry, Jack.
Oh, tell them about your teacher being here from 50
Yeah,
years.
yeah, I did. I mentioned that. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah. And they're actually moved right next to me right now in my little frame here. So yeah, and I'm really, really delighted that Jim Hainert and his wife Donna are here. And I do have to say, at one point, Jack had, I'd read a poem that I had written in high school. And Jack had asked, you wrote that in high school? How did you learn how to do that? And I have to say the reason I learned how to do it was because of Jim, who I did have a full year of an independent study up on top of our regular required language arts classes and English classes, which were creative writing, expository writing, I think one semester and the other. I did have a full year of independent study with Jim. Where I worked on creative writing stuff. I worked on, writing short stories and writing poems. And so that's where I learned that in high school. So let's see, I'm going to start, I think I'm going to start with Heaven and Earth Tart first. This is Heaven and Earth Tart. Choose 14 ginger snaps, russet and crackled as Georgia clay. Process them into a fine red dust. Resurrect the spicy dust with flour and dawn yellow butter. Blend, then chill, then flatten into a tawny disc. Tamp the earthy crust with care into Aunt Tia's tart pan. Create the frangipani, that velvety almond cream, soft and mellow as starshine, sugar and butter and almond meal, the tiniest amount of flour, a single egg, a faint whiff of vanilla, a hint of almond essence. Whisk it all together, fill the crust with fragrant, fluffy mounds of it, smooth it down in swaths as if the back bowl of your spoon was painting the Milky Way. Each apricot's a flaming star. Nestle the tangy fruits in radiating spirals onto the swirls of almond cream. On baking, the frangipani rises to surround each one in clouds of aromatic sweetness. Then bake, 350, 40 minutes, middle shelf. The pastry that emerges is as golden and celestial as the radiant sun itself.
Delicious.
Yeah, and I still haven't made it. It's like that. I was thinking about doing that, and that's why I found the recipe and thought, okay, a poem here. And as an introduction to this poem, my sister Bonnie, who's my younger sister, I have a younger sister than that still, but Bonnie sort of looks around for Zillow listings of what would be significant homes in our family's sort of history. And she happened to notice that my grandparents' home in Beverly, in the Chicago neighborhood of Beverly, was for sale last year for something like, I think, $413,000. And my cousins and I on Facebook, and she and my siblings, noticed. I'm being distracted by my cat here, who's been sleeping very, very nicely until now. My cousins and I had a lot of fun, and my siblings had a lot of fun, sort of remembering, bringing up memories of what our grandparents' house was like. So this is that. This is called Zillow Home Tour, 10135 South Bell Avenue, Chicago, Illinois, 60643, July 2021. Please note, it might pain you to learn that the entire cost to build this house in 1923 was the same amount as your projected mortgage payment for a single month. Unless it's mentioned, you won't be alerted to seek out signs of the coal chute on the north side of the house, along the walkway where the lilies of the valley used to grow. You won't know that the coal room, indeed the entire basement, covered now in pretty terracotta tile, was painted leaden green, that a shipping box of toilet paper, 48 rolls at least, each roll covered with a crisp Marshall Fields Viridian wrapper, resided on the basement floor at the entrance to the tiny toilet closet, replaced now by that weighty wooden entertainment bar. If bright portulaca spring from the soil between the two-track driveway path leading to your new two-car garage out back, you'd have no inkling their seeds have endured, prevailed for 90 years. You wouldn't be informed about the tiny verdant garden thicket fenced in just this side of the alleyway. If you'd been told, you'd be apprised before you sat to watch for leeches slithering on the stump placed there as an impromptu seat for those seeking sylvan respite from both the goings-on inside the house and from the traffic din on Western Avenue 2 blocks away, the automobiles, the buses squealing by, the urgency of sirens on their way to Little Company of Mary. But the thicket, the stump, the leeches, long gone. You will hear, no doubt, the blue jays' guttural calls. They still persist, predominate in this oak opulent neighborhood, but you won't know the sounds of Benny Goodman, Tommy Dorsey, Louis Armstrong on the Victrola, of the tentative starts and stops of music practice, the cornet, the banjo, piano, violin, the voices of two tow-headed tykes and their carrot-top sister lofting out of your open windows on a summer evening.
Oh, thank you. Kathleen Schenk, you're redoing your house. That's sort of bringing it back. That poem reminds me of that. Thank you, Mariana.
Thanks.
So much. So much. Well, we've come to the end of our program, and of course, it's my arbitrary decision to save the finest poet to close things down, and that's Robbie Hart. And Robbie comes all the way from the Berkshires. Is it snowing up there? I would think. Yes.
We have snow on the ground.
No?
No, we do.
Oh, you
Snow on the ground.
Okay, so do we. How about that? So Robbie's up there in the Berkshires, and she comes all the way down here via Zoom to be with us every month, and it's wonderful. And she's also a couple of these people. You know, Beth McBride is our daughter's first babysitter, the person who started us off. Robbie's a former student. The other day, I met 3 people who were in the very first class I ever taught at the college, and they were the people. There's your cat, Mariana. Yeah. All right. Our cats are asleep up here. They're behaving pretty well. But our dog wants out. So Robbie, I want you to read, you know, like a 33 at 78. I could let a dog out. You're being very quiet and pretty good about it, though. Would you like to come say hello to everybody? Would you come here? You want to come here? No. No. Okay. She's looking at me like. So our finest poet, Robbie Hart, and a special note with her, as I've mentioned about the other people, she's remarkable at spelling. Just amazing. Here's Robbie.
Thank you. We've moved many times over our marriage, and almost always it happens to be around mid-December. So that was part of the reasoning behind this choice. The other was that my husband told me to read something light for the holidays, and most of my poems are not. So this one's called Picture Wall. One by one, I take each picture down from its hook and dust off the mites with the same melancholy reluctance I feel lifting the Christmas ornaments in early January from the soft shelter of white lights and still fragrant boughs. Here we are about to take our vows, your grandparents nodding their quiet approval from the far left frame, while a princess and 2 pirates heading out for Halloween smile over on the right, she with wondering toddler's eyes, marveling at the size of the trout you and Riley caught just 2 photos below. His first fishing pole, your first and last camp out, 103 dripping degrees and a tent with a broken zipper and no bug spray. Pete is still in his cowboy hat and holster, and your brothers are joking once more, though we tried to quiet them down because our daughter is sleeping so peacefully just inches above, wrapped in a delicious dream, about to be baptized in old Irish lace. Before long, the terrier on my lap, held on a tight leash by my big brothers in their first buzz cuts, is sure to spot the cat on the front steps of our Christmas card portrait. And then sure enough, the entire wedding party, 3 frames south and east, will pause, forget the occasion, and step casually into the Father's Day picnic, overdressed and without any present. This next poem is about another photo on our picture wall, and it was written in response to a recent Marginalian Instagram post with a quote from Maria Popova that read, "The cloud inside the cloud, every new sadness, a miniature of the cumulative cumulus." And this one's titled Cumulative Cumulus. My mother standing on the dock, a wool sweater buttoned for warmth, hands in her pants pockets, drinking in the seamless imbrication of cloud dance and lake shimmer. The trees surrounding the lake, a blaze of viburnum red, burnt orange, amber yellow. One of the last fall's leaves reached that splendor, that brilliance before drying and dropping. My father took the picture. I picture him now, crouched on the shore, closing his right eye, still struck by the beauty of his bride of nearly 50 years. The intensity of sky so perfectly reflected in the lake that the clouds and cloud reflections created a perfect ring of fire. It's possible they might have stepped out on the water and believed it would hold them. The next morning, they would help each other into the old rowboat, untether the lines, chuckle together about the likelihood of falling into the water, and row across the lake. Looking at the still image now, I wonder at their sense of adventure at 70 and 80, driving 800 miles to stay on a tiny Berkshire lake, explore its waters. My father pulsing his strong hands and thin frame to work the oars, my mother holding back her anxious impulses. The sun spreading its last bastion of warmth and light before retreating into winter's hollow cave. I marvel at their vitality, at how little we realized how lucky we were, how unexpectedly my father's hip would crop their boundaries, my mother's cancer would alter their view. Years later, I'm still struck by how quickly the stunning spectrum of color drains from the trees, the lake, the clouds, turns with the seasons, vanishes into the spectral winter sky. Inside the cloud, inside the endless cloud cloth of all December mornings, I feel the cumulative cumulus of cold, of absence, of lingering mourning. Yet in my heart's eye, I imagine them rowing on in the unwavering beauty of autumn and sunset, floating in the accumulation of dense, swirling cumulus, seemingly attached to the ground, yet out of reach. Some days, I imagine it's possible I might step out on the water and also be held. Thank you.
I invite you to unmute yourselves and so we can hear you applaud for these wonderful people who have given us a start to our season. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for coming. I noticed that Clifford Rames is here today. I encourage you to check out Clifford's wonderful program of poetry called Poetry Passages. And you can just Google that, Poetry Passages, and enjoy what he does. Is very fresh, very original, uncommon. And thank you all for coming. And I don't think I really should follow everybody, but they demanded that, so I will. This is an end of the season poem called Putting Away the Santas. My wife collects Santas, and we have well over 100 of them now. And if you came in the house, you sort of, maybe we're hoarders, I'm not sure, but it's a pretty good thing to keep. Anyway, there's Santas everywhere. So come on over and say hello to Santa. Putting away the Santas. He has found one for every summer. Some in Christmas stores that keep things in a desperate sparkle all year long. Some in antique shops, some at garage sales. He sets them along the windowsills here in the house they bought and thought would be the first in a line leading to the perfect home. Now they can't leave the creek that bends its way through the woods out back. The morning light slides through the jagged space between these handmade bedraggles of divinity. Their beards flow or scraggle down across their chests, unfurling from their rust-red cheeks. Some raise their arms in unabashed glee. Others are weary, their eyes soft, their hands barely holding on to a bear or wreath. A few are tiny, a few are tall. One is straight as the back of a Swedish chair. A couple are full of gnarled Appalachian cuts and curves. One plays the accordion. One holds back 7 dogs. Some look as if their sacks are full of sorrow. Their daughter made one from a toilet paper roll. He puts them out the day after Thanksgiving, welcomes each one back, asks how their sleep among the ornaments has gone, even thanks them for lasting one more year. Now he wraps them one by one in a paper towel, lays each back in its box. Come mid-July, he'll start the search again, hoping he can find another jolly lugger of unaccustomed joy. Thank you all so much. And we'll say good night.
Thank you.
Night.
Thank
Bye.
Good night.
Thank
Bye,
you.
good night.
Thank you, everybody, for coming, and
Thank you,
Thank
dear
you.
friend.
Good seeing you, Jim and Donna.
Happy holidays.
Jack.
Great. Thanks. Good hearing
Bye.
you.
All right.
Thank you all. Good night.
Happy holidays.
Good
Good
night.
night,
Happy
Betsy. I didn't
Happy
say hi to
holidays.
you either.
Here's
Hi,
Vivi.
Vivi.
Um,
Hi,
you got-
Vivi.
you.
Vivi.
Thank you.
Hi, honey.
Want to go out?
Aw,
Thank you, Frankie.
Aw,
Vivi.
Vivi.
There you
I should
go.
say that. Hi, Betsy. Hi, Betsy.
Hi, Betsy.
Come on, say hello. Say hello.
What else do we have here?
Oh, there's Tim's dog too. And Clifford's.
Yay, Clifford. There he is.
Night.
We.
How fun. Hi,
Good.
Julie.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Merry Christmas, Tim.
Thank you, Danny. Thank you.
Thank you. It's
Thanks for
beautiful.
letting me join in on this. I loved it. Absolutely loved it.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you. Yay. Well, you're looking the other way. You have a profile.
Good night, Vivi.
Good night.
Vivi.
See?
Hi, John
All
Boy.
right. Really.